Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Ain Humaira binti Azmi, and I'm going to present question 1 from second topic. We will start with introduction. COVID-19 pandemic in Malaysia is part of the ongoing worldwide pandemic of coronavirus disease 2019. This pandemic can cause several symptoms to people health, and Malaysian government has already taken proactive measures to curb its spread by imposing the MCO, that is Movement Control Order. This pandemic will have a negative impact on the labour market, and people will start to lose their jobs. In order to help people and economy, government has announced a series of economic stimulus package to help individuals and companies that are affected by the COVID-19 crisis. Okay, now we will look on the details of the problem for second topic. From this statement, there are few problems that occurred in year 2020. First is Malaysia's economy has been impacted due to COVID-19 tragedy. Second, Malaysia's economic growth, GDP, that is gross domestic product, are affected and decreasing because of the pandemic. Third is the economic activity also decreasing. Fourth, all economic sectors need to shut down to comply with MCO. And fifth is the only suppliers such as services and manufacturing sectors are allowed to operate. Okay, now we will continue with the meaning of recession and unemployment. Recession is a period of economic contraction where businesses are less demand and they start to lose money. When recession happens, the government and central bank will increase the money supply and credit creation using the monetary tools. Okay, for the unemployment is a term referring to individuals who are employable and seeking a job but are unable to find a job. Recession can cause unemployment. As output and demand fall, some firms need to cut back on hiring new labor, and some will lay off their workers to reduce costs. Unemployment tends to rise quickly. This will cause employer cannot pay wages to their employees anymore. So at the time, once people become unemployed, they will have less money to spend and buy goods and services. Government and central bank will increase the money supply and credit creation by using monetary tools. Government will do an injection of money circulated in the economy to induce more business activities and thus can increase the employment. Okay, now we will continue with why economists and government concerned about recession in economy. Okay, reason is recession is a significant of declining in economic activity spread across the economy. Recession will be lasting more than a few months and will affect the GDP, real income, employment, industrial production, and many more. Recession primarily caused by a fall in aggregate demand. For example, that can cause is financial crisis. Besides, it will also affect the rise in interest rate. Recession in economy can impact many people. People will earn less money, have a hard time living their life, and it will give a long-term impacts to everyone, including economy. Another example that can caused by recession is economic damage. It will result in higher unemployment, lower wages and income, and also lost opportunities. Other activities that will impact by recession in economy, such as education, private capital investment, and economy. Opportunity will suffer in this current downturn. Lastly, we will discuss about Bank Negara Malaysia incentive to overcome and handle the problem of pandemic COVID-19. BNM provided four stimulus package that is for individuals, for corporates, for micro and SMEs, and lastly for tourism industry. First, we will discuss for individuals. For individuals, Bank Negara provide a moratorium on loan or called financing repayment. The purpose is to ease the cash flow of individuals who are likely to be most affected by COVID-19. And for credit card facilities, banking institutions will offer to convert the outstanding balance into a 3-year term loan with reduced interest rates. This will help borrowers to better in managing their debts. Okay, second is for corporates. Banking institution will facilitate requests by corporations to defer or restructure their loans or financing repayments in a way that will enable viable corporations to preserve jobs and swiftly resume economic activities when conditions approve. Third is for micro and small and medium enterprises, also called SMEs. BNM has allocated funds under BNM's Fund for SMEs to provide support for SMEs in sustaining business operations, safeguard jobs, and encourage domestic investment. BNM also provide 2 billion ringgit worth in loans for SMEs. Okay, fourth and last is for tourism industry. Travel agencies, hotels, airlines, as well as businesses in the tourism industry will be given a deferment of their monthly tax installment for 6 months. Hotels will also be exempted from service tax. Besides, government has also allocated funds in form of the travel discounts vouchers, increased tourism promotion by providing 30 million ringgit to Tourism Malaysia. I think that's all from me. Thank you for your attention, and I will pass to the next presenter.
My name is Nur Fariha binti Muhammad Ramli, and I'm going to present about question 2. The graph shows about the GDP growth rate in Malaysia from 2015 until 2019, where in 2015 the GDP growth rate is 5%, and it decreased to 4.5% in 2016, and it increased again in 2017 with 5.7%, and then decrease again in 2018 and 2019 with 4.7% and 4.3%. In 2015, the GDP grew at 5% against 6% in 2014, which was better than the 4.9% economists expected. This is because the private sector remained the key driver of economic growth, while the public consumption was able to sustain its growth. Malaysia's economy, as measured by GDP, expanded 4.5% in 2016. In 2016, fourth quarter, private consumption and investment grew 6.2% and 4.9% respectively. The service, manufacturing, mining, and construction sector have grown, while the agriculture sector has contracted. The external environment may continue to remain challenged, where the Malaysian economy will experience sustained growth, with the primary driver being domestic demand. For 2017, the GDP grew to 5.7%, mainly due to domestic demand and export growth. Bank Negara Malaysia said that domestic demand increased mainly through private sector spending, and all the major sectors of the economy had registered growth. Malaysia's gross domestic product in 2018 was decreasing to 4.7%. The World Bank also has expected that GDP in Malaysia for 2018 is going to be 4.7%. This is due to factors, namely lower government spending and decline in private and public investment. In 2019, Malaysia's gross domestic product decreased to 4.3%. This is the lowest since the global financial crisis a decade ago. This is because the growth was affected by the challenging external environment, disruptions in commodity-related sectors, and contraction in public investment activity. The GDP figures for both quarter 2019 and 2019 were the lowest for Malaysia since the global financial crisis. This graph shows the GDP growth rate in Malaysia for quarter 1 in 2020. Malaysia GDP growth moderated sharply to 0.7% in the first quarter of 2020. Growth affected by slower economic arising from COVID-19 and containment measures implemented globally and domestically, such as the introduction of the Movement Control Order (MCO) in Malaysia. Movement restrictions including international and domestic travel restriction, limited working and working hours, and compulsory social distance significantly reduced the economic activity. Growth in this quarter supported by service sectors and manufacturing, while the other sector shows a negative growth. Service sectors have seen an increasing pattern due to decrease in tourist arrival in our region. That's all from me, and thank you for lending me your ears, and I'm going to pass to the next presenter.
My name is Nushrada Binti Rosli, and I'm going to present about question 3. For the introduction, the spread of the COVID-19 virus has vastly impacted the health and economic landscape of countries all over the globe, with Malaysia being no exception. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Malaysian government declared a Movement Control Order, which is MCO, on 18 March 2020, where all except the most critical economic industry were instructed to shut down. The effect of the restriction as well as the pandemic in general have been forecasted to contribute to a decline in economic activity for a prolonged period. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, more individuals and business were impacted. The supply chain is disrupted because almost the entire sector has stopped working. Some production firms have also stopped operation and worse still, laid off workers as they are unable to bear the cost. It is difficult to predict when the economy will fully recover as long as COVID-19 positive cases continue to rise and no vaccines are discovered to treat the disease. The effect because of COVID-19, this pandemic will have devastating effect on the Malaysian economy from both external factors, which is global supply and demand shocks, and domestic factors, MCO. So firstly, this pandemic will have intensely damaging effects on both the Malaysian macroeconomy as well as on the economic welfare of the rakyat. Secondly, the closure of businesses and services along with the travel and movement controls will have outsized impact on private consumption and business investment. Thirdly, critically, this liquidity squeeze will be disproportionately felt by small and medium enterprises and vulnerable groups such as lower income individuals and part-time and unemployed workers. And the last one, this can have knock-on effects on the entire economy, leaving businesses insolvent, individuals bankrupt, and the financial system saddled with non-performing loans. So for the next slide, Malaysia will enter an economic recession this year? Yes or no? So let me explain. The Department of Statistics Malaysia revealed that Malaysia gross domestic product (GDP) grew by 0.7% in Q1 2020, when it was expected to grow between 3.9% to 4.2%. Visually, every economic analysis is forecasting the GDP figures for Q2 2020 to be one of the worst in recent memory, given that this period covered the entire movement control order alongside the conditional and recovery MCO, where there were barely any economic activity. If, as expected, the GDP growth goes into negative territory in Q2 2020, Malaysia will only officially enter the official definition of an economic recession if Q3 2020 is also a negative growth quarter. Despite the best effort of the government with the multiple economic stimulus packages, it is highly likely that Malaysia will enter an economic recession this year. In April 2020, Bank Negara Malaysia projected Malaysia GDP for the year to be between 0.5% and negative 2%. The Department of Statistics Malaysia forecasted a decline of negative 1.7%, while the World Bank projected a negative 0.1% growth. For the Malaysia unemployment rate caused by COVID-19, in March 2020, unemployment in Malaysia rose to 3.9%, whereas in April it spiked to 5%, the highest it has been since 1919. It is highly likely that the unemployment rate will keep rising thereafter. During a recession, businesses tend to see less demand as well as reduced output, which leads to the next logical step of cutting back on labor. This can be in the form of laying back on new hires or even retrenching current employees, both of which contribute to high joblessness in the labor market. If you are a fresh graduate looking for your first job during this recession, you can expect it to be a little tougher getting hired than normal. Whereas current members of the workforce may see their companies downsizing or freezing new hires. For the effects of KLSE Bursa Malaysia, rate of overnight policy rate OPR and base lending rate, we move one by one. So first, KLSE Bursa Malaysia. The outbreak of the virus has also affected KLSE Bursa Malaysia. In Malaysia, KLCI component stock were among the biggest losers across Bursa Malaysia, like Nestle Berhad, Public Bank Berhad, and Kuala Lumpur Kampung Berhad. It is without a doubt that the COVID-19 situation has impacted global market. It is an unprecedented event and many, including businesses, have been taken by complete surprise with the way things have been unfolding. For example, the global aviation sector is forced to scale back their operation as people are no longer travelling. Non-essential businesses including real estate, construction, automotive, travel agency and retail outlets have been forced to close. Many businesses are now finding it hard to keep up with their monthly expenses. Other than that, Bank Negara Malaysia reduces the overnight policy rate, which is OPR, by 50 basis points to 2%. As expected by economists, their lowest level since the 2019 global financial crisis as the COVID-19 pandemic batters the economy. The reduction in the OPR is intended to provide a more accommodative monetary environment to support the projected improvement in economic growth amid price stability. The MPC will continue to monitor and assess the balance of risk surrounding the outlook for domestic growth and inflation. And then for the last one, for the best lending rate, a change in the OPR like the recent OPR cut on 5 May 2020 will trigger a chain of events which affect various borrowing rates being offered by banks to consumers, including short-term interest rate, fixed deposit rate, as well as the base rate BR and base lending rate BLR. These cuts will reduce loan costs, improve liquidity and stimulate economic activities. Apart from that, the restructuring and rescheduling of the 6-month moratorium will ensure that the capital and financial market returns to stability. It will also help individuals and businesses facing financing problems and liquidity constraints. And for the slide, this is the list that the most recent one released by BNM as of 14 May 2020 and illustrate the respective banks' base rate, base lending rate, and indicative effective lending rate. So this is the example. In conclusion, none of this will be easy. For starters, it will be costly. Government budget deficit targets will need to be overshot. Difficult decisions will need to be made later on how to boost tax revenues. Besides, even with comprehensive and valiant efforts at cushioning the blow to the rakyat and businesses, some amount of job losses and business closure will be unavoidable. Yet, the economic, social, and political cost of inaction or even insufficient action is far greater and far more frightening. Surely, this is no time to be timid. In light of the emerging risks, it is clear that the fiscal policy needs to go further beyond the February stimulus package in safeguarding the livelihoods of the rakyat. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Nuri Batrisha binti Ahmad Faizal and I'm going to present question 4. When the recession or unemployment threatened, the central bank used especially monetary policy to increase the money supply, increase the quantity of loans, reduce interest rate, and shift the aggregate demand to the right. The expansionary monetary policy will increase the employment and growth. The expansionary policy seeks to stimulate an economy by boosting demand through monetary and fiscal stimulus. In the long-term run, continuous money supply may lead to inflation. There are two types of monetary policy. Instruments are quantitative and qualitative. The money policy instrument for quantitative tools are discount rate, open market operation, legal reserve requirement, funding and interest rate, while the qualitative tools are selective credit control. Firstly, for monetary policy quantitative tools is discount rate. Discount rate is the interest rate Reserve Bank charge commercial bank for short-term loan. Lowering the discount rate is expansionary due to the discount rate influence other interest rate. A decrease in discount rate can overcome the recession. A decrease in the bank rate imposed by the central bank on discount house, which will affect all other rates in the market to allow more circulation of money in the economy. As lower rate will encourage people lending and spending. Reserve Bank and the Board of Governors made the discount rate changes. Next is the open market operation. The buying buying and selling bonds is what known as the open market operations. Open market tools help the central bank to overcome recession by buying the short-term bonds. The central bank will buy the short-term bonds from the public or commercial in the open market to increase purchasing power of the public to encourage more spending, as the buying of short-term bonds lead to the decreasing of interest rate. Increasing in demand will create more jobs and will reduce the unemployment rate. Okay, next is reserve requirement. Reserve requirement are the amount of funds that a bank holds in reserve to ensure that it is able to meet liabilities in case of sudden withdrawals. Reserve requirements are a tool used by the central bank to increase or decrease money supply in the economy and also influence the interest rate. A decrease in reserve requirements can reduce recession and unemployment. This includes in decreasing statutory reserve, liquid asset as well as cash requirement. The purpose is to increase the bank's ability to create credit by reducing the percentage of the reserve required from the deposit. Next is the funding. Through funding, the central bank buy long-term bonds in order to reduce the recession. The conversion of long-term, medium-term loans to short-term loans allow the bank to shorten the duration of the time for loan payment. This allows them to increase the volume of loans and their demand for money and purchasing activities will be increased. So the last is interest rate. The central bank decreased the interest rate in order to overcome the recession and unemployment. The central bank will persuade the commercial bank to reduce their rate of interest on deposit. This will reduce total saving and increase the level demand for money. On the other hand, when all banks decrease the interest rate, the cost of credit to the public will be reduced. This will increase the public purchasing activity and increase the demand for money. Lower interest rate make it cheaper to borrow, and this can encourage firms to invest and consumers to spend. The lower interest rate also reduce the cost of mortgage interest payment. This gives the household greater disposable income and encourage spending. The lower interest rate also reduce the incentive to save. Lower interest rate reduce the value of pound, making export cheaper and increase the export demand. Unemployment also will be reduced when the firm offers more jobs. The central bank will persuade commercial banks to reduce the rate of interest on deposits. This will attract more credit and increase level of demand. The qualitative tools of monetary policy is selective credit control. The recession mostly goes with inflation. If the central bank follows selective credit control rather than the general credit control, it's good to overcome the recession, as the general credit control like to reducing interest rate may fuel inflationary forces and therefore accentuate recession further. The qualitative instrument also measure include allowing and supporting the banks and financial institutions to advance credit household as well as firms for productive and non-productive purposes. So the conclusion is by using expansionary monetary policy is a way to implement during recession and unemployment. The basic objective of expansionary policy is to boost aggregate demand to make for shortfalls in private demand. Expansionary policy is intended to boost business investment and consumer spending by injecting money into the economy, either through direct government deficit spending or by increased lending to businesses and consumers. The tools that central bank implement will help to overcome the recession and unemployment. However, the control of money supply is a short-term measure. In order to reduce the unemployment, especially cyclical unemployment, in the long-term run, a continuous money supply may lead to inflation. The central bank needs to properly plan and execute it with efficiency and effectiveness. So that's all for me. Thank you for lending your ears. So I will pass to our last presenter.
My name is Nur Shaira binti Jamaluddin. I will explain more about the monetary tools of monetary policy and the advantages and and the disadvantages. Open market operation is the purchase and sales of securities by the central bank. Central bank has complete control over the volume of open market operations. Second, it is flexible and precise. This tool can take it even if the change in reserve is small. Open market operation can vary with the small sales or purchase of the security. The third advantages is that it is easily reversed. If there is a mistake in this when conducting this tool, the open market operation, central bank can easily reverse it. It can easily fix the problem. And the fourth advantages is it can be implemented quickly. If there is it does not involve the administrative delay. Central bank only need to place order with the dealers and it will proceed. And the disadvantages is, first, it can cause confusion. The confusion is about the real intention of central bank. Second is sales of securities by the central bank can prove ineffective in restraining the loans of the bank, so as long as the possibility of dissolving can replenish the reserve as before. And the success of open market operation is limited by the willingness of central market to bear the loss. In the case of short-term securities, the loss is relatively less, so central bank tend to take the short term. So the next tool is discount policy. Discount policy is terms and condition when the central bank lends to depository institution. The first advantages is discount policy will avoid the panic, the financial panic. When no one else will provide reserve, it will avoid the loss of trust to banking institutions. It is an important requirement as successful monetary policy, as people care about it. The disadvantages is that this tool is highly risked. This is because when bank knows that central bank can correct their fault, so they tend to ignore it. So other bank will likely do the same, so it will be high risk. The third is announcements of discount rate change will create confusion about the real intention of central bank towards outsider. The other advantages is fluctuation will occur when central bank set the discount rate at a certain level that spread between market interest rate and discount rate as the market interest rate change. And for the advantages is discount policy is less efficient than open market operation. This is because open market operation is in complete control of central bank, while discount policy can only control the discount rate. And the third monetary policy is reserve requirement. Reserve requirement is an obligation of depository institution to keep a fraction of their deposit in a bank or as a cash. Requirement will affect the bank equally. Will affect all banks equally because it control the money supply and interest rate. Second advantages is it has a powerful effect on money supply. Small changes in reserve requirement will change the money supply in a bigger scale. The third advantages is reserve requirement can ensure the banking institution to stay away from the future contingency as a result of shortage of funds. The disadvantages is it is too strong because only small changes in money supply and the interest rate are hard to control because of the varying of the reserve requirement. Increase in reserve requirement will cause a problem for bank which has excess reserve. The third disadvantages is it is not efficient because it can control the effect by conducting open market operation or purchase window. And the fluctuations of reserve requirement will create uncertainty and make the liquidity hard to control. And the last disadvantages is reserve requirement is expensive to administer the changes.